Hey everybody, Ashindor here. I am back with another Duelist video. Now, one of the things that I wanted to do more when I first started trying to do Duelist recording and just YouTube in general, I wanted to occasionally do some actual explanations of how making decisions and how, actually playing the game works, which I've found very difficult to do when I'm just sort of commenting on games as they happen. I think I've gotten a little bit better as I've gotten practice at this about just making, sort of general commentary, but it's very difficult to be able to delve into the nuances of a decision that I'm making or that I think my opponent is making while I'm actually trying to play the game. So today I'm going to try to do another kind of more in-depth look at some of the decision-making mechanics in Duelist. Separately, but also very excitingly, I did manage to make S rank this month. This time, legitimately, no disconnect shenanigans handing me the last win. I actually, successfully played through the entire thing, so I'm very pleased about that. So what I want to do today is bring up the deck that I actually used for almost all of Upper Diamond, and that actually put me over the top. It's going to be very familiar if you've seen some of my other videos. It's my Onyxhai deck. But then I'm going to play through about 3 of my final matches in Diamond. Because I actually had some pretty good plays towards the end there, and I think it will illustrate a lot of the more cool interactions in Duelist and some of the ways that decisions go into when you're playing in Upper Diamond. Now I will say I didn't really play a lot of the top tier decks during my final climb there. I was fairly fortunate in my choice of opponents. I didn't run into a really bad Reva or anything. So as I've mentioned previously, Onyxhai is not the strongest deck you can play. Even within Songhai, definitely not within Songhai, but it's one that I'm familiar with and that I like a lot. So, the deck has changed a little bit since the last time I showed it on video, so I wanted to give a quick recap of how the deck works. It's a Songhai deck using Kaleos as your general for the teleportation ability, and it runs the pretty standard sort of positioning-based Songhai cards. So you've got Inner Focus, you've got Juxtapose. I don't run Mist Dragon Seal because between Juxtapose and Kaleos' Blink ability, I don't think it really earns itself a slot in the deck, but you could definitely argue for its inclusion. Then as far as actual creatures go, the deck is not quite conventional like most Songhai decks you see these days. Katara is an obvious staple. It's just an incredibly good card for its cost. But then for my other early drops, I've got 2 copies of Shiro Puppydragon to buff my other stuff, and in particular Key Beholder and Lantern Fox. And then I finally settled on running 3 copies of Primus Fist. I've tried Kaido Assassin, I tried Healing Mystic, I've tried various other early drops. So far, Primus has actually just fit the best with what the deck overall wants to do by giving you a solid 2-3 for 2 early on, and also giving all your other stuff a nice little bit of burst when you need it. I'm running Battle Pando as my area clear. I fitzed around with other options. This is, I'm still not in love with it, but it can be, it's solid, right? It's a solid card choice for clearing out. In particular, I've been hitting a lot more Lilith on the ladder lately, which means swarms are becoming a problem. With the change to Kara, there's also a lot more Wall Vanar, and Battle Pando is pretty good against Gravity Well. So, overall, I'm pretty happy. Key Beholder is just awesome. Love Key Beholder. And then you've got standard Songhai Killing Edge buffs, Lantern Foxes, need no explanation. I'm running 2 copies of Onyx Bear Seal as the only point removal in this deck. Other than these 2, everything else is based around being able to, smack somebody for some damage with a creature. Got 2 Spelljammers for card draw. And between the Spelljammers and the Lantern Foxes, this has, for the most part, been about the right number. For a while I was running 3, and I found myself getting my hand clogged up a bit too often, particularly because there are a decent number of other decks that are also running Spelljammer. Then I struggled for a long time about what an additional kind of 3 or 4 cost creature to include in here should be, and I finally settled on Dioltas, who is pretty aggressively statted, but his death, and things get killed a lot in this game, also gives you that very nice tombstone, which on top of being able to give you a little bit more control over the game, because of its provoke ability, also synergizes really nicely with Onyx Jaguar and with Shiro Puppydragon, because you can slowly buff up its attack over some number of turns, and because it has so much health, it can actually end up dealing a pretty decent chunk of damage. Then you've got your in-game 6-pack of 3 Hamon Bladeseekers and then 3 Onyx Jaguars, which is the namesake for the deck. I continue to believe that Onyx Jaguar is just a little bit too weak to really be a top tier card, but is a very, very fun card. And I am hoping that with the next expansion that they're saying they're probably going to release maybe in December or possibly, I don't know, maybe might slip to January or something. I'm not sure exactly when it's supposed to come out. But hopefully we will continue to get interesting options for Kaleos beyond what what Reva is playing. And hopefully Onyx Jaguar will continue to have some cards that support this sort of deck. Hamon's just a beast. So, with that quick recap of how Onyxhai is set up, instead of diving back onto the ladder, I'm actually going to bring up my match history. Now, I did play one goofy game with a Magmar deck after I hit S rank. We're not going to watch that one. Instead, I want to go through the last 3 games I played when I was climbing the ladder. As you can see, I played this deck quite a bit recently, and this was basically what I did to climb the ladder all the way to S rank. So it is a climbing viable deck, although I would not recommend it if you are looking for like the quickest climb. So with all that said, let's bring up the first match that I played in my final 3. Now this was against Argion, and I'm going to try to, again using the replay feature, kind of take my time, explain why I'm doing certain things, explain what's going on in the match. So this is probably going to be a longer video and possibly a much more of me talking without much happening video, so if that's not your cup of tea, I do apologize. Hopefully it will still be at least of some interest. So this game, I started off with a pretty strong hand. I've got a Katara to drop early. I've got, a Key Beholder as a second drop. If I'm able to take a mana tile with Katara, I can play Dioltas. And then I've got Hamon as my threat that I'm building to. Now, I didn't actually want Battle Pando in this hand, because against Argion, Battle Pando just doesn't really do a whole lot other than potentially ping off charges of artifacts. But that's really more of a late concern. I didn't think my way through that until I had already pressed go, so that's why I've replaced there instead of replacing during the opening screen. Now, I want to call something out real quick. I replaced into this Onyx Bear Seal. I will have this in my hand for the rest of the game, and the reason is that I know against Argion, he is going to be playing some giant, frickin' irritating provoke minion at some point that's going to lock me down, and I'm going to need to have a way out of it. So that's why I'm holding on to this Onyx Bear Seal. So I drop my Katara. Pretty standard play. Okay, so this is the first disappointment of the match. Opens with Cyberspine. Saberspine is really good against Katara, because it kills it and hangs around with an additional 1 point of life to continue to deal damage. So that's not great. What I'm going to do is drop my ranged minion to make sure I can have something to nuke more cards with. And then, even though I have this paralyzed, I'm really concerned that he's going to be able to play an Ephemeral Shroud or something else and just nuke my ranged minion, so I go ahead and take the 3 damage and kill it. And lo and behold, second Saberspine. So, as frustrating as it is to lose my Key Beholder, I'm actually okay with this, because that means, he has at most 3 Tigers. He's now down 2. So for the rest of the match, I probably don't have to worry too much about, rush damage out of hand, which is nice. I'm also able to take this mana tile and go ahead and drop Hamon Bladeseeker. Now, if he's got a Martyrdom here, that's a problem. But Martyrdom is not played all that much. I do see it occasionally, but it's not a huge problem. But in any case, he chooses to go down and drop an Ironcliff Guardian, thinking that he will be able to, protect himself. Huge provoke minion, roar to make it very tough. Awesome. Definitely something I have to contend with. But what I end up doing is replacing it to Juxtapose, or maybe I had the Juxtapose, I forget exactly how that worked. I can blink him over here, and then I just swap them. And I do apologize, the replay feature here tends to get slightly out of sync, which is unfortunate, so we'll just have to kind of deal with it. So with this guy over here, he's functionally irrelevant, because Lionar is one of the factions that, although it does have some airdrop minions, like Ironcliff, it does not really have, any kind of reach once the minions are on the board. In other words, he doesn't really have a way of getting this thing over to threaten any of my stuff. So with it effectively neutralized, I've dropped Dioltas here to try to force him over to this side of the board, away from his Guardian, and then just popped him in the face for 8. And third, Saber Spawning. So he's out of Tigers, and that's a good thing. But little irritating there. All right, so now we've got this problem. He's been able to get his second provoke minion onto the board, and this time it's going to be effective in preventing Hamon from hitting him. I don't have another Juxtapose. You know, even with Blink, he's got himself well protected. So I'm going to have to find a way to deal with this. Now, my thought at this point was that Shiro was probably not going to cut it. So what I instead did was I just went down and I killed the block right there. Alright, fine, I've got the Hamon. That's going to put me at 3 life on Hamon, but that's fine. I'll just go ahead and kill the minion right there. I've got this guy to try to lock down this Ironcliff Guardian. And I kind of went back and forth on where I wanted to position it. I thought about positioning it up here. So that basically his general wouldn't be able to get a free hit off on it. And in retrospect, that might have been the smarter play. I haven't sort of made up my mind on that one yet. But I end up putting it here because I think I want to keep this guy from being able to close with Hamon. Even if they have like a way of killing this, right? Then I drop my Fox, I inner focus it, and go ahead and hit, so I can guarantee to get at least 1 Phoenix Fire and a little bit of damage in. Because at this point, right, he's got the Iron Cliff, he's got 4 cards in hand. I have to be on the aggressive side here. So he's able to drop the classic Lionar, you know, cheap minion plus Holy Immolation, and that kills my Hamon. Rip Hamon. But he also has to spend the rest of his turn clearing out that Tombstone, which means my Fox stays alive. So here's my thinking at this point, right? He's got these giant moving provoke minions, so if I get locked down, he's just gonna maul me. So what I do is I play Shiro Puppydragon, and then I drop Key Beholder in the corner to prevent this thing from moving. And my strategy at this point is to try to just keep to the left side of the board, buff up a ranged minion, and try to gather damage in hand to just be able to kill him. He so far hasn't shown a whole lot of point removal. The only thing I really have to be afraid of here is if he's got a Sunbloom to dispel my ranged guy, which is a definite possibility, but given the cards that I have in my hand, right, this is really the only path towards victory I have. I don't have another Hamon that I can drop and try to, you know, trade and fight effectively. Fox is just going to go base. I'm going to get the second Phoenix Spike. And I had spare mana, and I figured I've got to knock him down one way or the other. So I figured let's nuke him in the face and go from there. This thing's paralyzed, which is awesome, so it won't be able to close yet. He plays Elix Stormblade, which is a problem. Actually, I'm going to pause for a second. So this card I don't think is very commonly played. Certainly this is the first time I've seen it in ages. So if you haven't seen this card, what it does, on top of being a very, beefy minion with Provoke, it allows his general and all of his Provoke minions to move essentially twice in a turn. Which means that my comment earlier about them not having a lot of reach is now sort of incorrect. They can move a whole lot. But luckily, I maintained an Onyx Bear Seal in my hand for the entire game, knowing that this is what would have to happen. So, on this turn, I continue my campaign to nuke him. I play my Spelljammer there, and then I Onyx Bear Seal that guy. Here's why I'm playing things like this. I need to take this guy out to prevent him from being able to move double. That's actually more the real threat than the Provoke or the stats, is him being able to move his whole Death Ball here up and close with me. So I take that out so that he is, you know, slightly paralyzed. This is actually a mistake on my part, I think, in retrospect. I move here. What I should have done is moved here, so that I forgot about the pando. Never forget about the pando if you're playing as Onyxhai, right? Because what he's going to be able to do is use this to move up and play things into this gap I've left. My priority is to protect the key beholder. I should have positioned myself here so that he would only be able to play down here and then have to move around the L, so to speak. But it's alright. So, with that done, right, I now have a key beholder at 5 and a Phoenix Fire. So if he doesn't find an answer for the key beholder right here, I've got him. This is what I should have been very concerned about and played around. Now, I am incredibly fortunate that he played a Primus Shieldmaster here, and not, excuse me, and not an Ephemeral Shroud. If it had an Ephemeral Shroud, I would probably have lost the game right there. Instead, he's got a Provoke minion, which is a problem, because that means I won't be able to nuke him from range. And he is building this guy up to be a real problem. But I am able to do this. Primus Fist, which, like I mentioned earlier, is kind of come in handy, buffs up the Spelljammer. Between the Spelljammer and my General, I'm able to kill the Provoke minion. Ranged minion waxes General to 5, and then the Phoenix Fire to close. You can see how if we'd gone 1 or 2 more turns, these things would have been able to successfully close the gap, and I would have been in some serious trouble. Now, it's possible that the key beholder would have seen me through, because I was at 18 life. He never really successfully applied a lot of damage to me. But I would say that if we had not finished it off there, the odds of him being able to stabilize and come back would have gone up a lot. So, that was my first of the 3 matches I want to show here. I'm pretty proud of that one. I think it really showcased a lot of this deck's ability to not only manipulate positioning in terms of using, you know, juxtapose to isolate their minions where they're not really relevant, but also in terms of being able to field a diversity of threats, because I had, you know, Lantern Fox generating damage out of hand, I had Hamon Bladeseeker just mauling people in the face, and then we had the Shiro Puppydragon key beholder combo giving us the reach we needed to end the game. So, that was the first one. Let's go into game 2. This time I'm playing Cassava, which historically has been a much harder matchup for me. Now, I will say, I think this opponent may have been the least familiar with the deck they were playing, just based on the ribbons. And as you're going to see, they still play a very good game. I think I got somewhat lucky in this particular instance, though. As you'll see, a couple of my other opponents have, like, you know, mountains of ribbons. So, in this game, she opens up with pretty standard Cassava play, uses Sphere of Darkness to nuke my mana tile, and then plays a 1-drop, in this case Blood Tear, just pings me. It's fine. Now, I didn't mention a whole lot about what I was looking for in my hand. My thought was that I would drop Spelljammer on the mana tile and then Katara in back, and just go from there. Like, this is not a particularly strong opening hand for this deck. It's fine, it's not bad, but it's not particularly strong. Lacking the mana tile, I opt to just play Shiro and then Katara, and let everything just get the attack boost and go. So my opponent plays Ooze, which is a problem. I'm going to have to deal with that. Excuse me. Okay, so I want to point out a couple things right here. That was actually really important. I'll come back to that here in a second. So my opponent has now got all of these fairly small, mostly irritating minions played out, and they're kind of just being a pain in my butt, right? Like, individually, none of this stuff is a huge threat. Even Ooze, which is pretty irritating, is not really going to be all that much of a disaster. But the flip side is, I don't even have, you know, all those many irritating things. I've got a Katara, who's been wounded, and I don't have any real way of getting him into backstab position. If you look at the way my opponent has positioned themselves, or how I'm positioned. And then I've got Shiro, who, having been attacked, is down to being a 1-2. So at this point, I was honestly very worried, and my plan to recover from this, or at least force the momentum back onto my side, was to be able to take this mana tile and drop Hamon Bladeseeker. But then Abyssal Crawler's random spawn of Shadow Creep took the 1 in 3, 5, 7, 1 in 7 chance of nuking the mana tile. So that plan went out the window. So my problem here, right, is what do I do to try to clear out some of this essentially trash without taking too much damage, and also get some forces on the board. So what I ended up doing was I dropped a Spelljammer here, because that'll draw me a couple extra cards. I inner focused a Spelljammer, which, by the way, if you're playing this deck, this is not something you really want to be doing. Like, this is, in general, not a great use of an inner focus. Oh wait, no, I'm sorry, maybe I don't do that? Maybe I just got misled. Sorry, false alarm, guys. Yeah. Never mind. What I do is I let Shiro buff this guy up to kill the ooze. He Abyssal Scars to kill the Spelljammer, which is a little questionable in my mind, actually. I probably would have let it alone, just to pick up the extra card, but, you know. Alright. So, things not looking so good. So I'm now out of all of my forces. She still has crap on the board. But I'm at 5 mana. Hamon Bladeseeker. It's time to do damage. Okay. Now, this is where things get really funky. And this is one of the, I think, a situation where, not this deck specifically, but Onyxhai in general showcases just how busted it can be at sometimes. She's dropped Reaper of the Nine Moons, which I don't see played all that much anymore, but is definitely a bad thing to try to deal with, particularly when I don't have a lot of point removal, and particularly when I've got, you know, another 2 Hamons in my deck that it could potentially pull. Reaper, when it dies, grabs a random minion from your opponent's deck. So, I was able to play Hamon, and luckily for me, she didn't have an answer. She's only at 2 cards. So she had a lot of like early drops that have been problematic, but she hasn't really gotten enough resources to seriously threaten me yet. I managed to draw back the second inner focus after having replaced the second inner focus earlier, but I've also got 2 foxes. So, yeah, this is going to be fun. So, with all that done, I take my 2 from Hamon. Fine. I placed my Spelljammer because I'm going to be drawing a lot of Phoenix Fires here. So I was like, double Hamon. Okay, strategy-wise, right? At this point in the match, my opponent has 6 Shadow Creep. She has a Reaper of the Nine Moons. She's at 23 life, and this thing is going to continue to generate stuff. She's at 5 mana, about to be at 6 mana, which means I need to win in like the next 2 turns, or if this doesn't kill me, an Obliterate will, or a Spectral Revenant will, or, you know, one of the seemingly endless number of awesome late-game cards Abyssinian can field. So, I've basically decided I need to go face right here, right now. So I double Fox, and I double Inner Focus. This is not a very common turn, but it's an incredibly satisfying one. Alright, so I think this is actually a slight misplay on my part. I should have moved my Fox over so that if she moved back and then dropped something, I'd still be in position. But, anyway. Killed that thing, did some damage to her. She's going to Demonic Lure my Hamon over here. Which is a decent play. Because he's my main threat. I don't have a Juxtapose in my hand, right? So, hit me with 5. I think this is just kind of like she had the mana on hand and figured, why not? But, okay, real quick I want to point something out. With Hamon, I'm now at 10 life, right? This replay feature is not the best. But, so with Hamon, I'm at 10 life. She's got 5, 7, 9 damage that she can easily reach me with. On my turn, Hamon will hit me for another 2 on the following turn, right? So if I don't win here, then she's basically got me. There's very few things I could do that would allow me to escape alive. But because I had those foxes in this position, and she didn't do anything defensive to deal with the foxes, she was able to get rid of Hamon, which is fine. But I'm at 7 mana, I had double foxes, so I hit her for 4, and then I just Phoenix Fire 3 times out of hand to finish her off. And this is going to take a little while to play out because gotta watch the animation for each one. So, that is the super awesome Fox victory, which I really had a lot of fun with. Alright, so that was the second match. Now we're going to go take a look at my final boss match, which is actually a little bit less intense than the one that I just played, but I think is a really cool exhibition of what this deck can do when it really kind of hits its stride. I liked this match a lot. So my opponent is, fairly experienced. Got 6 Magmar ribbons, so I was a little nervous going into this. Alright. So, this is a pretty strong Vath opening against this deck, because Onyxhai relies so much on minions for the early game, there's not like a lot of early point removal, right? A Sunsteel Defender is actually kind of a big problem. So a turn 1 Sunsteel using Flash Reincarnation, I was like not feeling it, right? So my play here was do one of my standard openings with this deck, which is to drop a Katara on the mana tile and then a Key Beholder to paralyze, and hope I would be able to find some way of answering this threat. So I've got that paralyzed, so I don't have to worry about it for at least a turn. That's really important. And he's got the Thumping Wave. So Thumping Wave is a very versatile spell in that it will work as removal for particularly troublesome creatures. So I turned it into a small swarm of bunnies, which I love, which right up here. But that's okay. So this was not ideal. I really wanted that Key Beholder to stick around, but because I've got a Lantern Fox and an Inner Focus, and I'm going to be able to take this mana tile, I am going to be in okay shape. So what I'm going to do, drop the Fox, Inner Focus it, I'm going to hit him to grab the Phoenix Fire, and then I'm going to sacrifice my Katara to pop this shield. I'm going to move down, and then I'm going to Phoenix Fire this to clear out the threat. So this was like a huge expenditure of resources, right? I'm down to 2 cards. I'm going to draw another one here, but I've got a wounded Lantern Fox and a wounded Kin. He's got the natural selection. So, not great, right? Sojourner, right. There are some elements here that I don't remember too well because they didn't really end up affecting the match all that much. But, so this is really clever placement because my Battle Pet guy is going to walk down, get murdered, and he'll draw a free card. I'm just going to go ahead and give him the card because I just need to get rid of anything that he has on the board, basically. I need to make sure he can't build momentum. And I'm able to drop Hamon. And I want to point this out. I position him here because he's already burnt at least 1 natural selection. He may have played 2, actually. So, although natural selection would have been a real concern, the other thing that would probably be more expected would be an Egg-Morph. And so I needed to position Hamon where he couldn't Egg-Morph, walk over, and punch him. So that's why I positioned him where my general is basically blocking his general's path over. So he's drawn all the cards in the world, and he buffs up this Sworn Sister. But, unfortunately for him, I've got Juxtapose, and I was able to replace into Onyx Jaguar. So, in another exhibition of fun times with Onyx Jaguar, I drop it up here using the same logic I did for him, right? I want to protect him from the general being able to come up and kill him. Move this guy over. I blink him over to the far side of the map. Juxtapose to put his somewhat threatening creature way over here where it's not relevant. And again, Magmar, like Lionar, has basically no way to change the positioning on the board once things are down. They've got some rush minions. And then my giant 11 and 11 smacks him in the face. So that was a lot of fun. Now, excuse me. Here's the natural selection, right? I assume that he drew into that with Sworn Sister or something else, so he is able to kill the Jaguar, which is unfortunate. And there's like all sorts of stuff he does here. And then we see it. It's Kron! Post-nerf Kron. But he's already replaced, which means Kron just isn't all that important. And because I have Blink up, I simply blink Hamon one space over and punch him in the face again. 11-11 Hamon in the face. Oh, so good. So, those were the 3 matches that I played to break into S rank, which this is the first month, I'm calling as the first month that I have legitimately taken S rank. So that's a pretty cool achievement for me. It's something that I was trying to accomplish when I set out, you know, starting these videos in the first place. And I wanted to go through and at least illustrate, you know, the matches that I was playing and the deck that I was playing when I did that. I would really recommend anybody, if you're looking for a fun Onyxhai deck that is not one of the Reva decks, they're currently like destroying the ladder. If you want to play something a little bit more goofy, honestly, also a little bit, you know, just a slightly different take on the Onyxhai capabilities, I would really recommend putting this deck together. I think the current build doesn't... Do I run any legendaries? I have 2 Spelljammers in there. But you could replace the Spelljammers for Sworn Sisters or Sojourners, and you'd probably be fine. So there are a lot of epics in this deck, but there's only the 2 legendaries. So if you've got some spirit to burn, or just got the cards already, highly recommend Onyxhai. It's a slightly different flavor of Onyxhai, not as strong in terms of pure potency, I think, but as hopefully I've illustrated with some of those matches and just in general, will still serve you well at any point on the ladder. And with all that, I think I'm going to call it for now. If you enjoyed this sort of deeper dive into, you know, decision making and deck structure, please let me know in the comments. This is a sort of thing that I think is really interesting, but I don't, you know, want to do a whole bunch of them if nobody is really interested in, you know, watching this sort of thing. I think that my next video I will try to do another one like this, but on a totally different deck that I've been playing with, and hopefully that one will be pretty interesting as well. So, until then, thank you everybody for watching, and I hope you have a great night.